What's going on, bottom line viewers? It's Mitch here, live to discuss Matthew Stafford requesting a trade, the relationship between the Detroit Lions and Matthew Stafford has been an interesting one. Of course, Stafford, a former first overall pick in the NFL draft way back a decade ago, 2009. He's been a part of the franchise as their franchise quarterback, their face of their franchise, through the years, bringing them some of their most successful seasons as their starting quarterback. This franchise has never been one of the NFL's best, but they have had some great players in the NFL on a lot of losing teams. And Matthew Stafford is another name on a long list of great players that never had team success in Detroit. You're talking about Barry Sanders, Calvin Johnson, Matthew Stafford, many more. And Matthew Stafford wants to change that. So the team and him have decided that they want to move in a different direction. That Detroit, they're at a point where they can no longer have Stafford as their quarterback. They don't feel that the relationship is mutually beneficial because the way that I look at it, Matthew Stafford is too good to be on a team this bad. And that's straight up honest truth. If you have Stafford on this team for the next 2 years, which I believe his contract still has 2 years on it, if you have him on this team for the next 2 years, you're going to win games that you shouldn't be winning because he is a good player and he's going to overcome a lot of things, right? He's a good quarterback who's on a bad team. So when you have a good quarterback on a bad team, it's kind of like the Texans with Deshaun Watson. You should be a top 3 pick, but instead, you're going to win a couple extra games and you're not going to be able to ever pick in the top 3 or the, number 1 or number 2 overall, and you're never going to be able to rebuild your team. And that's been the case for many years with Matthew Stafford and a lot of these elite quarterbacks that are just surrounded by bad talent or bad coaching or whatever it may be. Detroit has basically scrapped their coaching staff, started over. They fired Matt Patricia. They just hired Dan Campbell, the tight end coach, as well as the assistant coach in New Orleans. And he is coming in with a new regime. They just hired Anthony Lynn as their OC. They're completely revamping their roster. Kenny Golladay is a free agent. So they have a lot of decisions to make this offseason to determine what the future is. And when you really look at it, I think for Detroit fans and for Lions fans, I understand that for some of you, this might be difficult because Matthew Stafford might be your favorite player. He has been probably the longest tenured Lion since he's been there. And of course, like I said, the face of the franchise and a first overall pick. He's brought you some playoff appearances, some good times, some great wins, some comebacks, all that sort of stuff. And he's been one of my favorite players for a very long time in this league. And I've been pushing for Matthew Stafford to get traded. I've been pushing, this guy needs to go somewhere where he can have that team success, because when people look back at his career, it's always going to be, he never achieved team success. He never won this many playoff games. He never won a Super Bowl. He was never able to do this despite, the talent he has, the talent he possesses, and the statistics he's put up. Everybody's just going to look at the team success. And I'm glad that, I'm not sure if this was bold for Matthew to be able to tell the franchise, tell the Lions, because that's not typically his personality, He's been through a lot with this organization, multiple coaching staffs, multiple receiving corps, offensive coordinators, no running game, no defense, this, that, and the other. And now he's finally at the age of 32. He realizes that he still has a couple years of prime play left, and he wants to be able to get the most out of it. I don't blame the guy. If you're a Lions fan and you're upset, I would not blame him, because I think if you're a Lions fan, and guys, this is a relatable situation for me, okay? Because, of course, I'm a massive Tom Brady fan. He is my favorite player of all time. But when looking at the Patriots roster this year, a side of me, a part of me did want Brady to leave. And it's not because I didn't want him on the Patriots, because I realized when you look at the Patriots roster, they weren't going to win the Super Bowl with Tom Brady this year, even with the great Tom Brady, because of the roster that they had, the cap situation they were in. It was time for them to split up, to move on. And while Tom Brady and Matthew Stafford are not on the same level playing field here, it's a relatable situation. If you're a Lions fan, the way you should be looking at it is, it's time for him to move on. It's time for us to move on. It's time for a new era in Detroit Lions football, and it's time for Matthew to get his success on his own. We got to say goodbye. And that's what I had to do with Tom Brady, and I hope you Lions fans are able to do that with Matthew Stafford. So Stafford and the Lions have kind of both realized, okay, it's time to see what we can get for you on the open market. And I'm going to discuss in this video what I believe he's worth, the value of him, how much better he can make teams out there in the NFL. And I'm also going to discuss potential trade opportunities, potential team fits, and all of that stuff. So, yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited because, again, I am a Matthew Stafford fan. And, again, I've been pushing for him to be traded because he's such an awesome talent. He has been underrated for a number of years, and he's never gotten the respect that he deserves because he's played in a market such as Detroit where you don't see them on TV a lot. They're not publicly broadcasted unless you watch Thanksgiving games. You know, they're never on Sunday Night Football, Monday Night Football, Thursday Night Football. You never, unless you're a diehard NFL fan or a Detroit Lions fan, you don't truly know how talented and good at football Matthew Stafford has been and is right now. And just on the surface, Stafford to me is a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. I think he would rank somewhere around number 7, number 8 best quarterback in the NFL. He still has all the physical tools that you would want from a quarterback. He has one of the strongest arms in football, as he has since coming out of college. He has great release, arm angles. He basically invented some of that stuff, along with everyone gives Aaron Rodgers the credit for all the arm angles and the ability to deliver the football. But Matthew Stafford has also been doing that over the past decade. We just haven't been able to see it on the, broadcasts every Sunday, every Monday, every Thursday, like I said. So Stafford is a special passer of the football. He is not as athletically gifted as he used to be maybe like 5 years ago, where he was maybe a little bit more mobile. He could escape pressure maybe a little bit more than he can now. But that's really the only area that I see in his game that has kind of diminished a little bit, has been the mobility and the movement within the pocket and just the ability to escape and make things happen that way. He can still do that. He has that slight escapability. I'm not trying to say he's Phillip Rivers or Tom Brady or anything in terms of mobility. He's definitely a tier above that. But yeah, that's probably like the weaker part of his game. The thing that I've seen with Stafford over the last 2 to 3 years has been his growth in terms of his mental acumen at the position. I think Stafford, early in his career, he mostly got by just his arm talent and his just pure ability. And I think of recent years, he's actually only gotten better in terms of his ability to read defenses, his experience. He is one of the best game situation quarterbacks. I think since coming into the league, he has the most comebacks, fourth quarter comebacks in the league. He is an expert of two-minute drives, an expert of fourth quarter football, an expert of, halftime, whatever it may be. I've seen a number of drives where this guy has 30 to a minute to get a field goal to end the game. And consistently the Lions put him in that situation and he was able to overcome it and deliver. So you're getting a guy in Stafford that can still rip the football. He has had some issues in terms of injuries. That's certainly a concern because his body has been wearing down over recent seasons where, he was out for basically an entire season last year. He played amazing football the first half of the year, a year ago, where he was one of the best quarterbacks in the league, a short list. Him, Russell Wilson, Mahomes, Lamar, those were the best quarterbacks in 2019 through the first 8 weeks. And then he got hurt. This year he comes back, starts a little slow. He was without Kenny Golladay for most of the year, but he had certainly awesome moments. I don't think it was his best year by a long shot, but he still was good. And I don't think, again, he doesn't get enough recognition because he's been carrying this team many a times. So, yeah, guys, I just wanted to deliver my thoughts on Stafford, where I think he stands right now in the NFL. And we're going to get into all the team fits, the potential trade scenarios that we could see for Matthew Stafford this offseason. Now, I don't know when he's going to be traded, how he's going to be traded, how that's going to be worked out. I don't know those details. But I do know that teams will be interested because I think if they see him the same way I do, which is a top 10 quarterback in the league, and at the very least, I think everybody sees him at least as a top half quarterback in the league, and certainly a top 10 passer in the league, then he's going to be traded somewhere for a quarterback needy team. And there's a number of them that we can go through. I'm going to take a look at the chat here real quick, and we're going to discuss the things, all right? So let's take a look at this chat. For whatever reason, it's not pulling up on my screen right now, so I'm going to have to take a look on YouTube. But before I do, make sure you guys do Gronk spike that like button, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more NFL reactions just like this. Also, guys, if you aren't already, get in that comment section. Ask any Matthew Stafford questions you have. Matthew Stafford questions. Do you want him on your team? Let me know your opinion. Would you want Matthew Stafford on your team? Let me know in the comment section below. All right. So let's take a look. I'm going to look up on my phone here all your questions. And yeah, I have a lot to talk about here because, again, guys, like I've said it already twice, but I think it's pretty exciting because I think we're going to see a guy who for many years has not been on a good football team and now is going to have the opportunity to potentially go somewhere that could give him an opportunity for team success, for playoff success, and all of that stuff. So, I don't know. Are you guys not in the comment section? Like, for whatever reason, this live comment section isn't working. I'm not exactly sure what's up with that. But, yeah. That's weird. Very strange. Okay. That's weird. Anyways, if you guys do have questions, then I guess comment them in the comment section below. Maybe there's some sort of glitch because I know people are usually in the comments and we have like 50 people in here. So that's kind of weird. But anyways, so let's just talk about all the teams that we have that I think that he could be traded to. Let's take a look. YouTube's glitching, of course, as always. Doing me well, as always. So let's take a look at the teams. So let's just go division by division for the teams that are maybe quarterback needy that I think could possibly trade for Matthew Stafford. So starting with the AFC East, the Buffalo Bills have their quarterback Josh Allen of the future. One that I think's interesting here, the rest of the teams would need a quarterback for next year, in my opinion. Now, the Miami Dolphins are interesting because they have Tua, of course, and a lot of people have been talking about the potential for Miami to draft another quarterback, and that would be interesting because I don't think they would be willing to invest in a trade for a veteran like Matthew Stafford because they did draft Tua, but I think that they could draft somebody early in the draft this year. So Miami's kind of in a pickle. Do they believe Tua is truly the guy? I don't think they go the veteran quarterback route. That's just my opinion. So I would probably keep them out of that unless they go, because there's a different conversation with Deshaun Watson and Matthew Stafford, right? Stafford is kind of a guy that you want for like 3 to 4 years. Deshaun Watson is a guy that you want for the entire future of your franchise, the next 10, 15 years. So that's a totally different discussion. If Miami is going to make a move on a quarterback, it's probably going to be Deshaun Watson. So I would count out Miami. Then you go to the Jets and you go to New England. The team that makes most sense in this division would be the Patriots, obviously. I think the Patriots, they have a lot of cap space. They don't have a quarterback currently on the roster that would be starting caliber, right? Cam Newton's a free agent. Doesn't appear that they're going to bring him back. And I would think, as a Patriots fan, obviously I'd love to have Matthew Stafford. I think he would instantly have the best coaching staff he's ever had, probably the best offensive line he's ever had, and maybe even the best rushing attack he's ever had in New England, as well as, scheme-wise, McDaniels. I think he could operate that Brady-like system very well that they've ran in the past. And I think with McDaniels, being a guy over the last couple of years, I would say since 2017, the Patriots have been shifting towards more of a run-heavy, play-action, deep shot approach, and Stafford almost fits that better than Brady does right now. So I think Stafford would fit that ideally if they were looking towards, we're going to keep with this ground game that we had this year that was very strong for us, but we need to get better receivers. And that's the pickle that New England's in. They need to find a quarterback as well as find the weapons around the quarterback. And that might take this offseason. It might take 2 off seasons. It might be, a while till they get a competent tight end, a group of receivers that a quarterback like Stafford would be able to utilize at an elite level. But if you surround him, maybe you also go after Golladay. I don't know. But I feel like if they can grab 1 or 2 receivers or 1 receiver and a tight end, and they grab Stafford, they have all the cap to do that. Of course, they have one of the higher picks they've had in a while. And I know you guys want me to talk about this because obviously a lot of Patriots fans here. But I feel like this would be an awesome destination for Stafford because I know McDaniels would be able to put an offense around him. He would have that great protection, and he has a number of veterans on the team. I don't think it takes much in New England if they get Stafford, a receiver, and a defensive lineman. Like I've said all season long, New England had a bad year this year, a down year. They finished, 7-9? I don't even remember. They are 3 or 4 players away with a guy like Stafford to going back to the playoffs and being a legitimate team because of their coaching. So I think it's worth the shot. And I think it's worth the shot for New England. So New England would be the first one to look at and probably the only team in the AFC East. I don't see the Jets going with that because they still have a couple of years, I think, of a rebuild. I also think that they're going to probably pick a quarterback this year. So we'll see. The AFC North, it's interesting to see what the Steelers do with the Big Ben situation. Ben Roethlisberger might be retiring next year. They brought in Dwayne Haskins, which makes me believe that they probably won't be moving on from Ben quite yet. It feels like a Ben for 1 more year situation, and let's put this young guy, we can try to mold him behind him. If he has any potential we can squeeze out of him, maybe we can go that way, or we can draft somebody for the future. I wouldn't count the Steelers out necessarily, but just from a cap perspective, it wouldn't make sense unless Big Ben leaves. If Big Ben retires, then all of a sudden you have all this money to play with, and Stafford would be a guy in this offense that it's an upgrade from Ben, in my opinion, because of the way that these receivers are built. I think Claypool would instantly be, an awesome receiver with Matthew Stafford, and I think he gives you a downfield passing attack that few quarterbacks can give you right now. Big Ben has not been that this past year. He's very much been kind of Drew Breesian in terms of his yards per target. Down the field, he's not a great passer. He can still operate underneath Big Ben, but he's not the quarterback he used to be. I think Stafford would be an upgrade there. And you're in a position where you're kind of still in win now mode. You have a lot of veterans on the offensive line, obviously a defense that's built for win now. So if Ben were to retire, the Steelers do make some sense there. And then you go Cincinnati, obviously not. They have Joe Burrow. The Ravens, no Lamar Jackson. And then Baker Mayfield in Cleveland. So those teams don't make sense. Then you move to the AFC South. The big one that a lot of people are going to discuss is the Indianapolis Colts. Phillip Rivers retired, so the position is open. I think that would be another team that we saw this year took an approach of we need a quarterback and we're playoff ready. And they were right. They were playoff ready. They made the playoffs. They even had a pretty contested playoff game versus Buffalo. That was very tight. But Phillip Rivers just wasn't good enough, in my opinion. You know, he was solid. He did well there. He was successful. But I think with that roster, that's pretty good, but not great. And they can continue to add some pieces at wide receiver, maybe a little bit on the defense and the secondary, all that stuff. Indianapolis is like a quarterback and 2 players away from legitimately being an AFC threat, like a team that can go to the Super Bowl. If they were to bring in Stafford, maybe grab a receiver and another, couple pieces on defense, I think they would be really, really interesting. So I would not rule out Indianapolis. Obviously, you have that money open from losing Rivers. And Frank Reich's offense, he has one of the best offensive minds in the league. They have a great offensive line that's kind of built to have a pocket passer like Stafford, who also can add a little bit of improvisation that Rivers did not have. So I like that one a lot. I like that destination. The Colts make a lot of sense. Texans, it would only make sense if they trade Watson to Detroit, which I don't see happening. So let's rule that off the table. And then we have the Titans, who are staying with Ryan Tannehill, as they should. And then you have, lastly, Jacksonville, who knows who their quarterback's going to be. It's going to be Trevor Lawrence first overall. So then you move down to the AFC West. The Chargers have Justin Herbert. The Broncos, that's one that I think pops out right away. The Broncos are a team that I think if they get a good quarterback of Stafford's level, they are instantly a contender. Like, I'm not just talking about they could maybe go to the playoffs. If they get Matthew Stafford, the Denver Broncos would win 11, 12 games next year. And that's not an exaggeration. They're getting a lot of pieces back on defense. They have a phenomenal defensive staff there with Vic Fangio. They have a good coordinator in Shermer who actually could utilize Stafford in his offense pretty well, I think. Stafford's skill set fits that offense pretty well. And then, like that defense, if they're healthy, they're going to be top 5, at least top 10. The offensive line solid enough. They have a plethora of young weapons who could grow with Stafford there. Noah Fant, Jerry Jeudy, KJ Hamler. Like, they would just feast, I think. And they have a good running game. So the Broncos would be a legitimate playoff team next year with Stafford. So that's one to look out for because he seems to be a guy that John Elway would like because he has, that big arm. He's a veteran and he just feels like a John Elway quarterback to me. So I think Stafford would make sense in Denver. Kansas City, no, obviously. Raiders, I don't think so considering how Derek Carr played this year. And they also have Marcus Mariota. I think they are planning on keeping him as well. So I don't think the Raiders would be the team. I could see Gruden maybe thinking about it, but I don't think they're going to move on from Carr considering how he played. He's not the problem. It's mostly the defense that's the problem. Then you move to the NFC. I think the only way that the Cowboys would get him is if somehow they lose Dak Prescott to free agency. And then you would have to consider, I think actually Jerry Jones would love Matthew. I think he already loves Matthew Stafford considering he's a Georgia guy. And he's a Georgia quarterback. And, I think there's some history there, if I'm not mistaken. I think Jerry Jones thinks very highly of Matthew Stafford. So I think that would be the only way. If Dak Prescott leaves somehow, which could happen, could very well happen, Stafford could go there. And, that would be awesome. I think Stafford and Dak are probably like in the same tier of quarterbacks right now. Then you go the Eagles. The Eagles are trying to fix Carson Wentz. I don't know why, but they are. And they have, of course, Jalen Hurts there, who is already better than Wentz, but they don't want to admit it. But those 2 quarterbacks will be the guys next year. And then you have Washington, who's obviously going to be looking for a quarterback. They've moved on from Haskins. They've closed the book on that. I don't know if they want to go in with Taylor Heineke as their quarterback. I doubt it. They'll probably bring him in as a backup. But Alex Smith, I would think, he can't be their starter next year. So Stafford makes sense there, and Washington has been known to trade for a quarterback like Alex Smith, a veteran, very much like Matthew Stafford at this point in his career, where, coming off of a couple good seasons, I would say Stafford's a lot more talented than Smith is. But that would be interesting. But Stafford doesn't really seem to be a quarterback that would fit Washington's offense, the Turner offense, very well. They liked Smith because of the short passing game and all that sort of stuff. I think you'd kind of be wasting Stafford's skill set to put him in that offense. But Who knows? Maybe they look at him, but I think they'll go elsewhere, in my opinion. And then you look at the Giants. They're keeping Daniel Jones probably at least for another year. I think they need to give him another year because I think he's shown enough to give him another year, warrant that year. Then you go to the NFC North, obviously not Detroit. Minnesota, I think will stay with Kirk Cousins, and if they don't, they'll trade him and probably draft somebody, but I would expect them to keep Cousins. The Bears, it just doesn't make sense to trade within the NFC North to the Bears because it's a division rival. It doesn't make sense to me. Like, I get it, the Bears, that would make sense in terms of they need a quarterback, and it's not going to be Trubisky. It's not going to be Foles. They're going to move on from those guys, or at least try. And they do have a roster that if you put a quarterback like Stafford there, they would probably be pretty good. But, like, they were in the playoffs this year at 8-8, but they were still in the playoffs. And he would probably make them like 12-4. You know, that's the difference between him and Trubisky, in my opinion. But I just don't see that happening. I don't see that happening. It's a division rival. You don't trade quarterbacks to division rivals. That just doesn't make sense. And then Green Bay, obviously Aaron Rodgers, and then they have Jordan Love behind him. NFC West, the Seahawks aren't going anywhere with Russell Wilson. There are two very interesting teams. The Cardinals, Kyler is going to stay there for the foreseeable future. There are two teams that are legitimate possibilities here. So the first one's San Francisco. And this is the one that I've kind of tied to Matthew Stafford for a very long time. And this is the team that I've most wanted him to go to because I think if Matthew Stafford went to the 49ers, they would maybe win the Super Bowl. Like, I'm not even exaggerating. They went to the Super Bowl last year with Jimmy Garoppolo, who is a considerably worse quarterback than Matthew Stafford, in my opinion, at least from a talent perspective and what you can do with him. Like, Stafford would open up the Shanahan offense to the next layer, the next level. The thing with Garoppolo was he was effective and efficient in the underneath game and within the system. But Stafford can then add another level of now you open up the down the field stuff, right? And then you open up the experience of being a guy that's kind of clutch in these fourth quarter situations. He's a guy that Shanahan, you know, the only year that Shanahan's ever had like close to a guy like Stafford is Matt Ryan in 2016, where he could sometimes, you know, make something out of like that wasn't just in the system, right? The system was drawn up this way, you know, and Shanahan's going to get, that's why he still wins some games with Nick Mullins, right? Because if the system is in place, the quarterback will make some plays. They'll put up some stats. But I feel like Shanahan realizes now that he needs a guy that can sometimes make a play outside a system. And Stafford can certainly do that, whether that's extending a play or just making a wicked throw in a key situation. He's also a guy like Ryan who is very good off play action, and a guy that, like Ryan, is primarily mostly a pocket quarterback who can move a little bit. So you could see a Matt Ryan 2016 season with Matthew Stafford in 2021 if he went to San Francisco. Considering the talent they have, they are a Super Bowl team right now if they get a quarterback at that level. Like, they would be an NFC contender next year, no doubt about it. This is already the weaker conference in football, and then you have probably only really Green Bay and Tampa to really worry about. I don't see anybody else that's really on the radar as NFC contenders next year. San Francisco with Kittle, with Deebo Samuel, with Brandon Ayuk, a pretty good offensive line, a great running game, a great play caller, an awesome defense. That would be a great team, and that's really the missing piece. And then you look at the other team, the Rams. The Rams are the same thing here. If the Rams had Stafford this year, they might have been in the NFC Championship game. They might have been in the Super Bowl. I mean, the Rams, when you look at it, best defense all season long, pretty good running game, decent receivers, decent tight ends, awesome coach. Sean McVay, more than Shanahan, Sean McVay feels like a guy that's frustrated with Jared Goff. But the problem with the Rams is Jared Goff has like the organization, the franchise by the balls right now. Like, he's being paid so much money. He's being overpaid. His contract's kind of difficult to get out of. That's going to be a tricky situation. But we know the Rams have been able to play with the cap and play and maneuver and do what they please and do what they like with some trades and things like that. They've been very aggressive in the past. So you certainly could see that happen. Where, again, Stafford, just like, Shanahan with their offense, he would unlock another level of the offense that Jared Goff and Jimmy Garoppolo could not unlock. There would be things that you could do with Stafford that you can't do with the Goff, or you can't do with a Jimmy Garoppolo, or just to a better level, right? And again, I think, Stafford in a Rams offense, he would instantly be, again, a guy that could bring them to possibly a Super Bowl. So those are two teams that I would really look out for. The Rams and the Niners in the NFC West, they are in a battle. They're probably going to be in negotiations next to each other to get this guy. Now, something I haven't touched on, two things, is the cap situation of Stafford and then what the value of Stafford would be in a trade. I think the value of Stafford in a trade, honestly, I don't really know. Considering a guy like Alex Smith went for a third-round pick a couple seasons ago, that feels like a steal now, considering Alex Smith was a pretty solid quarterback back then. But Stafford, I think, is thought of higher than Alex Smith. I think a lot of people looked at Alex Smith as mostly a system product, while I feel like Matthew Stafford, if anything, has done wrong by the system or been wronged by the system in Detroit for a number of years. I think people look at Stafford's talent at the next level. So I would say Stafford might go for a first-round pick. We've certainly seen this in the past. Like a guy like Carson Palmer was traded to the Raiders at a similar age, I think, like around 30, where he was traded for a first-round pick. So I could see a mid to late first-round pick go for Matthew Stafford. Maybe an early second and a third or a second and a fourth, maybe. But I would expect a first rounder if a team is desperate enough. Like if you're San Francisco, if you're the Rams, if you're the Patriots, if you're one of these teams, I don't know why you wouldn't pay a first round pick for a quarterback who, again, in this cap situation, he's paying not a lot of money. He's $43 million over the next 2 years, which is considerably cheap. That's $20 million this year, which, like, guys like Stafford are being paid $30 to $35 million. You look at Tom Brady, right? He's being paid like $30 million, $35 million. If you could get Stafford for $20, that's another $10 million that you could potentially spend on maybe Kenny Golladay. Bring him to your team as well. But that's interesting. Like, he's super cheap. He's still in his prime. He's extremely motivated. And maybe he's undervalued right now. So you could maybe get him for less than you probably should. So I would expect it to be like one first or a second and another pick. But that's what I would expect. Maybe it's even a future first. Maybe it's not this year first, but next year first. I don't know. That's kind of up to Detroit. But Detroit has a lot of things to revamp. And I've said it before. I think if Detroit doesn't have Stafford, which it looks like they will not for sure, they are going to have a top 3 pick next year. Because I do not think they're going to have a quarterback this year that's going to give them the success, to get to even a mid-round pick. Like, they're going to be, I think this is their plan too. So you shouldn't feel bad if you're a Lions fan. They will have a top 5 pick. They might even have first pick, okay? But sometimes in the NFL, that's what you need to do to get another quarterback. And you can move on from Stafford. You can rebuild this team throughout this offseason to get for your future quarterback for next year. Start building the pieces around him. Build that receiving core. Build that offensive line. Build that defense the way you like it. Put in the system. Put in the culture that you want to have for this quarterback to come into. I think all those things are important. All those things are crucial. And yeah, I think it's going to be fascinating to see where he lands. Those are the teams that I would look out for. Those are the destinations that I think would be fun for Matthew Stafford. And I'm going to be rooting him on hard. And I'm likely going to be a fan of wherever he lands, the team, wherever he lands next year. Because I think if he goes, these are the teams I'd like to see. These are the Mitch desirable 5 teams that I like to see from Matthew Stafford. So obviously I'd like to see him on New England because that's my team. So that's number 1. Number 2, I'd like to see him with Kyle Shanahan in San Francisco. Number 3, I'd like to see him with Sean McVay in LA. Number 4, I would like to see, and these are realistic destinations. Number 4, I would like to see him rather in Denver or Indianapolis, and I think that would close the top 5. So Denver, Indianapolis, probably Indy, then Denver in that order. I don't know though. Would it be a better spot to go to Denver or to Indy if you're Stafford? That's interesting because like Denver has the receiving core built up. I think Indy has the better coach. But the defenses are going to be about the same. So that's interesting. Would you rather go to Denver or Indy? But I like all those destinations for Stafford. I think that those are probably one of those 5 will be where he goes. I think Detroit will do him a favor and trade him to a good place, a good spot. And dark horses for him, I think, would be like Dallas if they lose Dak and the Steelers if they lose Ben. Those 2 teams feel like dark horses because of their quarterback situation currently. Otherwise, I don't see the realistic chance of him going to a team like the Jets. That doesn't make sense. So those are my thoughts on Matthew Stafford and my reaction to him being traded this offseason. I'm excited to see where he lands. I'm excited to see the fit, how the team builds around him, and I'm hopeful that it's to a place where he can finally get the team success that he deserves. One of the most underrated players the last decade. Matthew Stafford is on the block. We'll see where he lands. If you enjoyed this analysis, make sure you do Gronk spike the like button. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more NFL videos just like this. I apologize for the comments not working. I don't know what's going on. I don't know if that's me, if that's YouTube or whatever. But comment your thoughts below in the comment section, and I'll definitely respond to you, and we can have a conversation in the comments. Thanks, guys, for watching. It's Mitch. Peace.